Daf Yomi Tractate, Sanhedrin, page 85a. Sanhedrin Pei Hey Amud Aleph. On top of the page with the words Rabbi Shimon Ha'amar. And doesn't Rabbi Shimon say, Kol malacha she'ena tzricha legufa patur aleha? With regard to one who performs any prohibited labor that is not necessary for its own sake, it is labor for which he is exempt. In this case, causing the wound was inadvertent and was not his objective when performing the action. Ba'o mine rav sheshes. Ben mahu shiase shliach laviv lakoso ulekalo. The sages raised the dilemma for Sheshes. What is the halacha with regard to whether a son may be designated an agent of the court in order to flog his father or to curse him if the court sentenced him to ostracism? Amar lahu v'achar mihitira ela kavod shemaim adif hachanami kavod shemaim adif. Rav Sheshes said to them, and did the Torah render it permitted to flog or curse another who is not his father? The Torah prohibited such actions. Rather, the reason that an agent of the court may flog or curse the one found liable is that the honor of heaven takes precedence over the honor due to another. Here too, a son may serve as an agent of the court because the honor of heaven takes precedence over the honor due to his father. Meisve Uma mi shemitzvah lakoisoi mitzvah shaloi lakoisoi mi she'ena mitzvah lakoisoi in addition shemitzvah lakoisoi shaloi lakoisoi. The Gemara raised an objection from Braita, and just as with regard to one who is commanded to strike him, there is a mitzvah not to strike him under other circumstances. With regard to one who's commanded to strike him, is it not right that there's a mitzvah not to strike him? My love, idi maka mitzvah, habiv no habiv acher. The Gemara explains the Braita. What is it? Not that both this first clause, the statement of the Braita, and the latter clause, the statement of the Braita, are referring to a situation where striking another is a mitzvah. For example, where the other is liable to receive lashes. The distinction between them is that this latter clause, which is referring to one who is not commanded to strike him, is concerning a case where the agent is his son and is therefore prohibited from striking his father even in that capacity. While that first clause, which is referring to one who is commanded to strike him, is concerning a case where the agent is another individual and not his son. This indicates that it is prohibited for a son to flog his father as an agent of the court. Lo, idi ve'idi, lo ishna b'noi v'lo ishna acher, v'lo kashya, kan b'makam mitzvah, kan sheloi b'makam mitzvah. The Gemara answers no. In both this clause and that clause, it is no different if the agent is his son, and it is no different if the agent is another. And it is not difficult to distinguish between the clauses. Here in the first clause, the reference is to a situation where striking another is a mitzvah, as he is an agent of the court. Here in the latter clause, the reference is not to a situation where striking another is a mitzvah. V'hachi g'tani ma makim mitzvah she mitzvah lakoisoi mitzvah shloi lakoisoi shloi makim mitzvah she'ena mitzvah lakoisoi ein adin she mitzvah shloi lakoisoi. And accordingly, this is what the Braita is teaching. And just as in a situation where striking another is a mitzvah, where the agent of the court is commanded to strike him, there is a mitzvah not to strike him. Even one lash beyond the number determined by the court. As it is written, 40 lashes shall he strike him, he shall not exceed. Lest if he shall exceed to strike him, Deuteronomy 25:3, it says he'll be degraded, meaning, or he might die even. But I think it says nikelkel, something like that, he'll be degraded. Deuteronomy 25:3, accordingly, in a situation where striking another is not a mitzvah, where one is not commanded to strike him, is it not right that there is a mitzvah not to strike him? The general prohibition against striking another in a situation is derived from this verse. Tashima, come and hear a proof from a Braita. Hayoytze lehareg uba beno b'hikau v'kirelo chayav ba'acher v'kirelo pater v'havinen ba ma'ishna beno ma'ishna acher v'amar Rav Chizda b'sarvin bo, let's say, v'einu yotze. The Braita says, in the case of one who emerges from the court condemned to be executed, and his son came and struck him or cursed him, the son is liable to be executed for striking or cursing his father. If another came and struck him or cursed him, he is exempt, and we discussed it as follows. What is different about the case where his son strikes or curses him, that he's not liable? And what is different about the case where another strikes or curses him, and he is exempt? Rav Chizda says the Braita is referring to a case where they are imploring the condemned man to emerge from the court to be executed, but he is not emerging. Therefore, it is necessary to employ force. Apparently, under those circumstances, where the use of force is sanctioned by the court, it is prohibited for the son to strike his father, to strike his Taji. I don't know why he would want to. What if they had a bad relationship? Maybe then he shouldn't, because he'd be letting out his anger. Okay, Rav Sheshes, Mokile b'she'ein Masaravim v'olad says. The Gemara rejects this proof. Rav Sheshes interprets this Braisa as referring to a case where they are not imploring him to emerge from the court for his execution. Is referring to a case where the condemned man is proceeding willingly, and it is not an agent of the court, but someone else who strikes and curses him at his own initiative. Ihachi achar nami achar gavra katilahu. The Gemara challenges, if so, even if another strikes one who was condemned to death, should be liable, as it is prohibited to strike or curse another. The Gemara responds, if another does so, he is exempt, since the legal status of one condemned to death is that of a dead man. Therefore, one is not liable for striking or humiliating him. Rav Sheshes the Gemara asks, but doesn't Rav Sheshes himself say, if one humiliates another who is sleeping, and the individual never awakens and dies, the one who humiliated him is liable to compensate his heirs for that humiliation, apparently. Even if the status of the condemned man is that of a dead person, the one who cursed him should be liable to compensate his heirs. The Gemara answers, with what are we dealing here in the Braita? We're dealing with a case where he's struck with a blow that does not have sufficient force to cause damage worth one pruta, in which case no compensation is paid. Loike. My pater de kamar, pater b'mama. The Gemara asks, but doesn't Rabbi Ami say that Rabbi Yochanan says in a case where one struck another with a blow that does not have sufficient force to cause damage worth one pruta, he is flogged for the prohibition? He shall not exceed? Why does the Braita exempt another entirely? The Gemara explains, what is the meaning of the term exempt that is stated in this Braita? It means that he is exempt from monetary restitution, but he is liable to receive lashes. Michlal divno chayav b'mamon ela bedino hachanami bedino. The Gemara asks, if the clause of the Braita that discusses a case where another individual strikes or curses him and states that he is exempt only from payment of restitution, one may conclude by inference that the clause of the Mishnah that discusses his son states that he is liable to pay monetary restitution. That is certainly not the case. Rather, the clause of the Braita that discusses his son states that he is liable to be punished in accordance with his appropriate sentence. Here too, the clause of the Braita that discusses another individual states that he is exempt from punishment in accordance with his appropriate sentence. The question remains, why is another exempt from receiving lashes in a case where he struck him with a blow that does not have sufficient force to cause damage worth one pruta? Ela achar ahainu. Time of departure. Damar krav v'nasibam chalois oil. V'yisemaisa amchom. Our answer is, rather, this is the reason that another is exempt. As the verse states, nor curse a ruler of your people, Exodus 22:27, for which it is inferred that this prohibition applies only with regard to one who performs an action of your people, meaning an action befitting a Jew. There is no prohibition against cursing one whose actions are consistent with the conduct, or inconsistent with the conduct appropriate for a Jew. Hatinach kala hakamin alon dimakshinan hacha liklala haka liklala. You want to ask, this explanation works well with regard to cursing, as that is the prohibition mentioned in the verse. In that verse, from where do we know we derive the halacha is the same with regarding the striking? The one answer is we derive that the halacha is the same for both, as we liken striking to cursing, based on the juxtaposition between the verses and address in the cases of one who strikes his father, Exodus 22:15, and the one who curses his father, Exodus 21:17. Ihachi benonami kedamar Pinchas b'shat shuva hachanami b'shat shuva. The word challenge is so, and the prohibition is not applied to one whose actions are inconsistent with the conduct appropriate for a Jew. His son too should be exempt if he strikes or curses his father whose conduct is inappropriate. The Gemara explains, as Rav Pinchas says, and in another context that references to a case where the one in question repented, so too the Braita is referring to a case where the condemned man repented, although he is being taken to his execution. Because he repented, he is considered as one who performs actions of your people, and his son is liable for striking or cursing him. Ihachi acharnami. The Gemara challenges if so, and the Braita is referring to one who repented. Another should be rendered liable as well. Rav Mari says one derives from the expression of your people that the prohibition applies only to one enduring among your people, not to one whose execution is eminent. Ihachi benonami. The Gemara challenges if so, his son should be exempt as well, since the father's execution is eminent.